Well, the Saints are never afraid to trade up. Kind of a bit of a surprise, I think, though, trading up the way that they did, ending up with this trade up of they're giving up a third and fourth round to move up several selections and get Chris Olave, who might have still been there at 16, I don't know, but they wanted to make sure they got him, and the Saints are always a team that is not afraid to trade up. So let's get into what I like about Chris Olave, and then let's talk about kind of the scheme fit and all that stuff in a second. All right, first things first, we can talk about his blocking for a second. This is obviously not something many people care about too much. I don't really think it doesn't move the needle that much for me, but just figured I should, throw this out there. Not much of a blocker. That's not what you typically expect him to be able to do. You're not drafting him to be a blocker. As you see, this doesn't exactly go as planned. Isn't really able to help out in that regard. So again, put him on the outside. Don't have him be a primary blocker on any play. You just hope that he can do good enough to not screw up the play, which is kind of what you hope with wide receivers anyways, and plenty of times there's ways that you can schematically just take him out of the blocking equation in general. So not a big deal, but definitely something on tape. Let's go over to a play like this where for Olave, what he's going to be doing on this play, this is kind of a lot of how he got his wins. It's going to be quarters coverage, and he's going to run just into a spot where you can see how this can get open against this coverage, right? Just underneath the corner who is covering the top of the screen. So the offense is right, the one that's right above Olave, just kind of that bubble where he can get open. And a lot of how he would get open is just getting to that spot quickly. Look, as you see, Olave is going to get to that spot quickly. So by the time that the defensive back realizes that this is the play that's happening, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to get over there. Again, Olave's not doing this with incredible route running or anything like that. I definitely think his route running has, some areas it can improve upon. It's kind of just, he doesn't really try that much. But part of it is because he didn't have to try. He would just get open by getting to his spot quickly. As you see, he does get the ball, and he's able to make the catch and pick up a first down there, largely due to just his ability to get to his spot. So that's what he does very well. And that's something you certainly see on tape consistently. Like this one's another example of pretty much that exact same thing. It's going to be a cover 2 zone. And again, you see him trying to get into a gap in coverage. Underneath the safety's zone, but also past the corner's zone, there typically is a little window where you can hopefully get open. Now, again, if a safety or a corner reads the play, then they get over and they cover up that spot. So there's several ways you can try to make sure that that window is as open as possible. Kind of the most traditional way, I would say, is route running. You just don't make it clear which way you're going, and then by the time that you do get into that spot, then they realize it, but it's too late. The ball is on its way, and you can make the play work. But another way is just with pure speed. Even if you kind of tip your hand a little bit, if you're getting there quicker than them, at the end of the day, what's the difference? And that's kind of what Olave does, and that's kind of how he gets his wins. Look, as you see, you can definitely see a scenario where he is able to get to that spot. I mean, the defensive backs here for Rutgers, they see this. It's not like they don't realize what's going on, but now they have to get over and try to make the play, and you already have that half step. If the ball came there, he probably would have been able to get open. The ball goes somewhere else, which wasn't even a bad read by the quarterback necessarily, but Olave could have potentially gained a good amount of yards on that play. So that's what he can do. And you could certainly sit here and say, well, how well would that work at the NFL level? Guys are a lot faster, so you might have to work on your route running. I think that's fair, but again, this is where things get a little weird because part of why he didn't really work on his route running too much is because he never had to. He would get open immediately. So you saw a similar thing with Jamar Chase, right? Where Jamar Chase had no route running whatsoever because he just blew by everyone, and then he just blew by everyone in the NFL level, so it didn't matter. But even like with Chase, there were times when he also worked on his route running because he had to get more wins. That's something that guys will do at the NFL level. That is something that you can get better at. And I also want to be clear, so stuff like this is a good example of kind of showing that he still has the movement to be a polished route runner at a certain point. Something like this, it's going to be a man coverage play, and you see Olave running over the middle of the field. So look at how he's going to kind of, stop and start, and it gets the inside leverage. He wants to cut over the middle, so the inside leverage can allow him to get open. Although, again, kind of going back to sometimes you'll see guys try to get outside leverage, even if they're going to the inside, just to be able to fool the defensive player that is covering them. It's not the worst strategy in the world, but usually you will see guys kind of get the leverage to the side of the field they're running towards. But that's kind of Olave's thing, right? He's okay with tipping his hand a little bit because he is athletic enough to still get open. And watch this really good cut over the middle. And again, that ball got knocked down in front of him, but had it not, that would have been a catch and he would have been able to pick up some yards. He won his one-on-one matchup, which was what he was supposed to do there. Another defender in front made a good play. That's not his fault. He did a good job of just getting open and getting past the defensive back who's trying to cover him. I think something like this is another very good example of kind of just what Olave has. So he has good speed, right? That's something that you always have to be aware of. Even on a play like this where it's a 2 safety deep coverage, a cover 2 zone, you still have to be conscious of his speed at all times. And you really saw how defensive backs were very cautious of it. In fact, you could kind of argue that a lot of Olave's routes were either go routes or curl routes because those kind of play off each other well, right? If you have the threat of a deep shot, well, then what are defensive backs going to do? They're going to play off. Watch how quick this DB starts bailing here to make sure he does not get beat deep. So at this point, he's several yards past Olave already, and that's kind of the value in having speed, right? And listen, he knows he has help over the middle, and deep's not so much since the safety has moved in a little bit, so he has to make sure that he doesn't get beat deep. But really, this kind of just clears up a curl route to be wide open. And as you see, the throw gets made there, Olave is able to make the catch, and you pick up some yards. So again, you could wonder, well, what happens when you're going up against corners who can also, run sub 4.4 40s? What happens there? Well, that's an interesting point. But at the end of the day, there are plenty of corners who don't run that fast, and so you should be able to beat up on them. So there's no such thing as a can't-miss wide receiver prospect. Those are the concerns, if you want to call them concerns, but there's a lot of good stuff there as well, and certainly plenty to like about Chris Olave. So yeah, I think one thing that's interesting, though, is, I talk about his getting to one spot, right? Well, I think that could actually, really work well with this. I'm assuming it's going to be a Sean Payton-type offense. Obviously, there's no Sean Payton there, but I kind of think about how, when Arthur Smith left the Titans, the Titans still ran a very similar scheme because they're like, hey, that worked, let's do the same thing. I'm assuming we'll see the same thing here in New Orleans where they're going to kind of maintain the same stuff with some, different changes, of course, some little wrinkles here as well. So if that's the case, I do think he helps this football team. I think Chris Olave is a good player. Was he the guy I would have drafted or traded up for? I don't think so, but again, this is what the Saints do, and it's worked out all right for them. They're not afraid to give up some extra draft capital to get a player that they really like, and Chris Olave is a player they really like, and quite frankly, they desperately need wide receiver help. Now, listen, they might not desperately need wide receiver help, even though their wide receiving room last year wasn't spectacular. Because, listen, if you have some of these guys who were trying to be wide receiver 1s last year instead have to be wide receiver 3s, that puts them in a much easier spot because Michael Thomas might still be there. So if Michael Thomas is back, which it's a big if, we haven't seen him in a bit, but if he is back, and now you have Chris Olave as a number 2, you have Alvin Kamara as a receiving threat out of the backfield, this offense starts to become a lot more scary, and Winston was solid last year. So they still need a tackle. We'll see if they do that, with their other first-round pick. But as of now, it's a good pick. Saints are good. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.